Hello, everyone. Can everybody hear me? Bethany, Josh, Cheryl?
I can hear you, Marco. You're good.
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you. All right, we'll get started on our meeting. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on our June 24th Park and Recreation Commission meeting. I can get started on detailing some of the meeting procedures. My name is Marco Rivero. I am the staff liaison to the Park and Recreation Commission. For your information, this meeting is being recorded for our public records and will be posted on the Arlington County Commission Meetings YouTube page. And please avoid sharing any personal information that you would not like to be made public. We ask that presenters and attendees please mute your microphones if you're not speaking. During virtual only or hybrid meetings, commissioners joining virtually and who are eligible to vote must have their cameras on for the duration of the meeting for purposes of meeting quorum, which we obviously have met tonight. For those attending via telephone, you can mute and unmute your microphones by dialing *6. The chat box will be monitored to address any technical or procedural questions during the meeting, but should not be used for meeting discussion. Commissioners should use the raise your hand function on the top toolbar to be recognized during the commission discussion. Assigned presenters may share their screens using the share content box above. As way of information, we will be holding a public comment period. In order to be recognized, please use the raise your hand function, and each public commenter will have up to 3 minutes for public comment. Staff will signal to the speaker once time is up. Thank you very much, and I will turn it over to our chair, Jill Barker.
Good evening, everybody. I call the meeting to order. Thank you for being here in person. We look forward to a robust meeting. We have our board liaison, Susan Cunningham, and the biofility. So I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Here, the minutes are passed. And the next thing we have is any public comments.
I don't believe we have any online, any in person. All right, have an observer. Okay, great.
No public comments.
All right.
So we'll go straight to, yeah, we're gonna go straight to Susan Cunningham. We're amazingly early. Despite starting the meeting.
Quite the turnout.
Yeah, we have a good. Yeah, so thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely.
Susan Cunningham is a fantastic liaison. Gary and I meet with her about once a month. And we talk over the issues that come up and things that here. So once a year, roughly, we get a meeting in person with the county board liaison and submit. So I'll turn it.
I can come anytime if you need me, but I do a great job keeping me up to date and asking if they need help. So, I mean, I think the biggest thank you first for serving. These commission roles are not small lifts, and both your leadership has been very, very thorough, and you guys have been doing great work as a commission. So thank you so much for doing that. We've got lots of exciting times ahead. You know, I think you guys have been through the public spaces master plan update before, but that's always
Actually, I have.
front. You haven't been through it. Okay, so that'll be exciting. And then we also are just getting started with the comprehensive plan update, which, you know, I think as we get rolled into that this fall, we'll be asking the commissions to sort of spokespeople out in the community about it. The comprehensive plan is made up of a whole bunch of plans, including the public spaces master plan. And it was created first in 1961, I think. So the idea is we should have a moment of broader engagement with the community to make sure we're understanding who we want to be when we grow up, or who we want to be when we grow up a little bit more. So that's likely to be underway, and we'll have a
How does the visioning 20?
It's sort of an input to it. So that, you know, that wasn't exactly a representative sample necessarily. It wasn't a survey or anything, but it's still input, and then all the other processes in the past. But planning team's trying to engineer it to make sure that we're really oversampling some of the less represented communities. So there'll be 6 like paid volunteers that have bilingual, paid volunteer, it's compensated. I don't think it's sort of a stipend type thing, that have bilingual capabilities in the 6 major languages and stuff like that. So some of that's been started a little quietly already, but this fall is when it'll be a big push, at least to do the first phase, which is what's on people's minds. How do you move from 2050 to land use of transportation?
Will it have input from the new transportation? Will the new transportation plan be done?
Yeah, well, the comprehensive plan is I think it's 13 different plans, and they're all getting updated at various different times. So
Okay.
they'll continue to get updated, and Marco, feel free to jump in and save me if I'm just describing it incorrectly. So it won't stop any of that, but it will kind of try to tie it together a little bit. I think particularly on biophilia and environmental resilience, like that wasn't really in the mindset in 1960 per se, or wasn't loud and clear. Public health also may get stitched in a little bit more. So it's really more of a, how do we tie those pieces together, and is anything missing? So that's kind of bopping around. And then we meet in July, and then we take off August, but July we'll have a couple more site plans, including the one across from Gateway Park. So that some lively conversation about the pedestrian bridge, some of you may have heard. And each of those site plans here, you can come back to this, because site plan is a way that we provide extra density to developers. And that's, for instance, how Gateway Park got funded and that sort of thing. But we're kind of trying to figure out how we describe those community benefits and that site plan process a little bit better, because it feels mysterious at times, and it also shifts over time as the values of the underlying value of the property shift. Unfortunately, they've been going down most recently. So some of those community benefits packages have to get realigned. But there'll be a lot of conversation about that, I think, in our July meeting with some site plans that are moving forward.
Are there going to be 3 in the July meeting? Is it
Uh,
end of Ross, 1 Roslyn,
In Roslyn's till September.
September?
Yeah.
So it's really 1 Roslyn.
I think so. And there may be some adaptive reuse ones coming through. I'm not sure if, there's definitely a longer list than that could show up in July, but I think most of them are going to hit in September. We did an extension of a bunch of them time out, so June 30th. So we did that this last session. And then what else? I think in terms of the kind of commission service, we've had conversation about the commission handbook, and the structure of the commissions hasn't been refreshed in a while, shall we say. So the handbook, at least, and the training and sort of onboarding is in theory getting refreshed for next year. But if you guys have any questions, or if you have any reactions as you what you wish you'd gotten instead.
I don't think these guys, did anybody get a handbook?
You can get the handbook. It's online. Okay, so maybe we should. Well, there you go. So that process
I on board
refinement.
had a draft in.
Yes, you saw the draft. There's a 2014 one, which is the one that's currently adopted, and it's on the commission website. It's probably worth spinning through it if you haven't, because it includes some of the expectations, like how to deal with the press and not deal with the press, is really the answer. How to serve and what to watch out for in the open meeting laws. And we could have Mason come and do a little refresher at some point if you'd like.
We redid our charter.
Yeah, right.
Based on, so there was a draft handbook that came with a draft charter.
Yeah. And then that all got. Yeah.
So that's what we did our charter. So whoever was in on the charter had to look at the handbook.
Yes.
Thank you for coming in. So that would be great.
Yeah, and I think, for instance, we had at public comment this last Saturday. Someone was talking about one of our commissions doesn't allow public comment. That's sort of their style, and it's not mandatory right now, but we may want to make some consistency or some explanation so that it feels a little bit
So yeah, is that what you meant by structure?
So the structure question is a little bit more of, I think some of the commissions since COVID have lost a little bit of momentum, in terms of membership. And I think one of the questions that I've heard is the commission commitment fit well with, especially, more recent residents, younger residents. Like, do you really want to sign up for 3 years of something, or would you rather do more of a project-based kind of thing? And so I think we'll keep looking at that over time. No immediate changes whatsoever.
I would just think,
thinking list.
one of the things that really stymies us is the rule that you're not allowed to be able to have committees of more than 2 people at one time.
Right.
And I get it that it's for public, open public record.
Yeah.
But there is something that does allow committees, if you go through a big process and do a committee charter,
Mhm.
which seems like not worth it for most of the things that we.
Right. Or if you had a committee that just has 2 commissioners and then has some
Then you don't have to. do
external
anything.
folks. Yeah. Yeah.
But if we wanted to have like a small group that worked only on SPRC, for example, they got their heads together, kind of developed a PRC approach to things.
Yeah.
We would have to have a separate charter for that. So,
I think that's true currently, and that's the sunshine law is a state level thing that makes our jobs harder too.
okay.
But we're not as big a group as you, so it's a little bit less difficult. But I think that's something we maybe could take up with the state as well, of
Oh,
clarifying some exceptions over time. And maybe we could start the process. I mean, if you're meeting publicly, then it would be an exception. If you were recording and posting, that's like staff time. Yeah.
yeah, I wouldn't
for
want
staff time.
staff to have to.
But I'm happy to answer questions.
Well, I just want to add to that. It just seems like it's an interpretation issue.
Yeah.
And Arlington County has a tendency to interpret things
A
a little bit more tightly
Yeah.
than other jurisdictions. And so it might be a question of maybe the state doesn't, really care if we have 3 or 4 people who are meeting, as long as whatever they're doing eventually
Yeah.
comes to
Yeah.
the public forum and it's here. I mean,
There's a
why should it matter? I mean, we don't talk about what's going on in our own heads before we do it at the meeting. So why should the fact that 3 or 4 people put it together? So
Yeah. I know last time I was on commission, we ran it all the way up to get the answer was very clear. But I will run it back up. And sometimes at the state level, things can shift when there's a new governor too. So this last round, I think, as evidenced by what was allowed during COVID, was still pretty tight. On some of those issues.
Would you want to bump it just to 3 people, or what would be, give you more, committee is just project group or something like that?
I mean, one interpretation would be that it's not a majority, so like you have a commission of 20, you could have 9 together. That would be one thing we could try to argue. I think some.
Well, I think that would make me feel uncomfortable, actually. Yeah, so, I mean, sometimes things come up and it would be more useful to have a subgroup look at it and report back, but they can't unless there's only 2 people in the group.
Yeah.
So what we've done instead is person A drafts it, sends it to person B sends it back.
Right.
And then we just do a wheel and spoke, which kind of works out great.
Yep.
Anyway, we shouldn't belabor that, but are there any substantive questions?
But I don't know how substantive it is, but during the budget, Cherry Hill Playground was proposed initially for pay-as-you-go, I believe. And I know the operating budget went forward.
Yep.
Has Cherry Hill been resolved?
It hasn't been fully. So we also, at our Wednesday meeting last week, had the update, if you were following the budget process, we had that whole list, including your recommendations of things that maybe could just be paused given the economic situation. And the decision at that time was, that's great to have that list, but we can wait we're not starting that work until July, so we won't do any work on it. In last week's update from the manager, he basically shared a longer list of projects, including that one, that basically said like all the PAYGO projects that can be deferred, we're gonna wait until at least November before starting any of them. And I suspect in November we'll be bumping some of them a little bit farther. The bottom hasn't really fallen out yet, but it still feels like it might. So that's, I think it's right to be prudent. And then we also had put some, some reserves aside as well. But what we heard last week was probably going to try to go at least until early next year without issuing a bond. So while our CIP says we would do a bond this year, given where interest rates are and also just how bonkers the bond market is right now, we're basically going back and scraping like all the pennies from the couches and, so we're not stopping any projects that are underway already, but we're waiting to start those others and trying to wait on bond issuance until at least early next year.
Do you know what the quantity of dollars is that we're putting on deferral? Like, is it millions?
That's in the regular bond issuance.
That would be, yeah.
Yeah, it's probably tens of millions.
Like millions.
Yeah.
So stuff that really can't be deferred to.
I mean, it could be, in an emergency, it could be, but most of those like couldn't be, it could be slimmed down a little bit and you could start a little bit later. They were also looking at costs and how those are coming in. So paving, for instance, same paving we did last year, like the material costs are coming in 3x what they were. So there's, and some of that may be, markets playing a little bit, but got to try to settle up. So schools has a couple of projects they will finish up. They, in theory, will need another bond, but they're also.
Okay. Anybody else have any? Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. You mentioned the 12 plans, and earlier this year, the board adopted a new climate policy. So is that a separate plan or weave through things like the public? How should
Yeah.
we be approaching this?
So we had the policy set the manager on a path to do a climate action plan. So that is kicking off this fall as well. And whether it becomes it's not a technically comprehensive plan element today because the elements are aligned with state requirements essentially. But it very much could either be an overlay, if you think of, we draw it as a circle with the little spokes, right? It could sort of be an outer electron level or inner tube, whichever way you think of it. Or we've talked about this first phase of thinking about revisiting the comprehensive plan is focused on, should we have an introductory chapter, that sort of ties some of those things together that says waste is related to climate this way and, transportation, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of community conversation to come on all of that. And I think it'll actually be really fun if we can get it timed in a place where all of us have a little bit of bandwidth to think about it. Which sounds tricky.
Yeah, what's the time horizon conference?
So the phase one, which is sort of the listening sessions and potentially drafting an introductory section, is loosely starting now with some little focus groups, and then the bigger engagement is in the fall. And I think they're supposed to wrap up by February of that first phase, and then TBD whether the second phase, which might actually change some of the plan.
I have a question. Comprehensive plans, at least as I typically understand them, typically have to do with like development, like where's development going to be placed, the density is it's higher level than zoning. It's very broad.
Yep.
But I guess my question in this is there is an ongoing fight over middle housing in this jurisdiction. How will that affect the comprehensive plan? Wouldn't that be potentially a roadblock to enactment?
So the comprehensive plan exists and has to exist regardless of whether we're, negotiating changes to things. Housing is one of the spokes. So or affordable housing is one of the spokes. So certainly that's in the room when we're talking about that. And transportation is also one of the spokes. And then all the like sewage and water and all those things, which
Forestry, don't forget
and
forestry.
forestry for sure. So all of those can intertwine to some extent. And I think that's part of why it feels like it's time to have, like, it's too separated a little bit, right? Like forestry needs to be connected to stormwater, et cetera, et cetera. So I think, the idea would be that, we kind of reopen some of the conversations to talk with each other about what's crucial to us, what's working, what's not working. One that comes up a lot is like townhouses are kind of a little hard to push into some of our zoning areas right now, but people want more of them. People want condos, but we can't dictate that condos be built because the market's not supporting them. And so there's all those pieces, and then the affordability versus attainability. So some of those conversations that definitely were lively and got brought up during that conversation, I would fully expect to still, because it is part of who we're going to be. How big are we going to be? Are we transit oriented, corridor oriented? Are we metro oriented? Are trees important to us? How are we going to deal with the stormwater? That's. But I think, but kind of what you're alluding to in terms of the tensions, I think that is part of what makes it really important that all of our commissions can be that listening ear and front line, because we are a very diverse community in age and stage and opinion, and all of that is important to us as a community to try to reflect then, like, where are we gonna go from here? And I am sure in 1960 it wasn't an easy peasy kind of conversation either, right?
Gary, I think you agree to be our representative on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you have any questions, comments, or input, Gary is the one.
Great, yeah, and there's a page live on the website, and there's an initial survey, which is very broad. That's on there. I think there'll be more detailed questions.
I have a general
Sure,
question.
sure.
You were complimentary of the work of the PRC, so thank you for that. But are there areas that you would like us to focus on more than we have up to this point? And also, are there any projects that you would like us to initiate, anything along those lines that are within the sort of the jurisdiction?
Yeah. I mean, I think one that we've talked a fair bit about is how we make space available and manage the availability of space. So there was another news cycle this week about a basketball camp that could, kind of got bumped. So I think that, and really in partnership with JFAC, the Joint Facilities Advisory Commission, thinking about where are we doing it well, which in some cases is in our DPR facilities or fields at least, and where could we do it a little better? How do we get to having a more common system that if you want to reserve this room to play ping pong, or you want to go to a library and play croquet when they're closed, or whatever it is, that you're able to find the door in, and that we can use all of our internal and external assets as effectively as possible.
I know the staff worked on that really hard in terms of field allocation,
Yeah.
methodology. So
And the reservation system, I think DPR is probably the
not
best
bad.
at this point.
yeah,
And then libraries is next best, and then APS has got some work.
okay.
Well,
But it'd be
one of the
nice to have
problems is
one single
between
door.
APS and PPR, that's a real challenge.
Right. And so getting some of the shared use agreements, and then getting, the superintendent's been good about, helping envision and think about having it more of a system of schools that, just similar rules at each high school.
So how do you see the PRC assisting with that?
I mean, I think having a rep that sits on JFAC might be useful for you guys, whether it's, whether you're just attending once in a while or
Not
you
yet.
I thought you were on.
you're willing. potentially.
Yeah.
Or it could be someone, you know, as you roll off, like I think Sports Commission just put someone, the chair rolled off and then rolled on to JPAC to kind of think about some of those pieces. But I think particularly in the time of constrained resources, I mean, resources are always constrained, but we're feeling it a little bit more. I think it's actually a really great opportunity to unlock some of the stickier points of, yeah, actually, we do have to share more now, which has been true for a while, but sometimes it takes a while. And then I think beyond that, sort of on the aging side of things and the youth side of things, we're doing the youth wellness plan, their youth well-being master plan right now. That certainly should have a park and recreation element. And then all of the aging programs and the aging housing as well have some intersections.
Susan, a quick question. More basic, really, or general. What is the comprehensive plan? Is it a tool for, starting a discussion, and how does it impact future decisions like housing, et cetera? Is it guidance?
Yeah.
What's the impact on future action?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think part of it is we haven't articulated that well in a really long time, right? So each of those individual plans, take the affordable housing master plan, for instance, it has specific goals of trying to get to 17% of the units in the county as committed affordable, so they sort of, based on some analysis and math that various commissions did at some point, it's like, here's the goal. And then we measure ourselves against those goals. It is not, we're on the waste management. We just updated that for the first time, I think, in 10 years. That looking at 10 years ago, what was our goal? And now we're really moving towards, it was county operations before. Now we're really moving into residents and businesses. You see like all the composting efforts and that sort of thing. So it does guide where we're prioritizing things. It's not like, it's not the same as the zoning code where it's like, it's all, and it's, there's no negotiation, but it is saying, here's the plan, here's what we're trying to get to and how it fits together.
Could lead to a change in law.
It absolutely could. Yeah, absolutely.
But it would just be, should we move into the zoning issue?
Sure.
So the only thing Arlington County can actually change in terms of law is the zoning code.
Yeah, so we can change our zoning code, we can change our underlying general land use plan that says like where commercial goes, where residential goes, that sort of thing. We have some other limited powers, but they're pretty limited. We also can set our tax rates within certain, boxes. And then we have other administrators.
So, so we wanted to get into the subject. I don't know, just about everybody here has been on a site plan review board.
Yeah.
Some of you more than others. Thank you for that. But a question has come up this month about community benefits and why is it that there doesn't necessarily have to be a nexus between the community benefit that's being sought with the project. So start with that.
Yeah, and I think we had a lot of conversation about this, the last couple site plans. I've been trying to pull out of our planning team a little bit more plain language conversations about that, because even for you guys who've been on an SPRC before, it can be kind of confusing. And for me, that's looking at a site plan like every month, and usually more than one. It can be a little confusing to separate out what's by right, what's earned density, using like the green building law as it is written today, and what's earned density beyond that. And so I've been really working with staff to try to articulate those elements better and consistently across each plan. We're not there yet, but we're working on it. And then community benefits or, site plan conditions, depending how you, even the word community benefit, I think can be kind of misleading and confusing, but there are site plan conditions that get added if you're earning additional density. Some of them are not entirely in our control. So for instance, affordable housing, there is a state mandate of what we're allowed to require, which is not as much as we would like to require for a certain portion of the site. And then the additional pieces are supposed to be somewhat related to the impact of that particular additional density. So, you know, and again, like how that's described and how it is cross-checked is something that we maybe haven't prioritized communicating externally, because it is a little complicated. So a couple of things that are happening. One is the work that we're doing on each site plan to try to get better at that, and would absolutely welcome your feedback on. I think Hotel Pentagon was like the kind of the first time we tried to like actually make staff put it on a slide, what all the elements are that go together. We are, our auditor, the board auditor is, has community benefits and the site plan process on the work plan. So it's actually underway now. So that office is trying to understand from a layman's perspective what is involved. And I think that will help us get another step closer. And then as part of the comprehensive plan update, I think part of it is like being able to articulate how site plans happen and how, you know, the comprehensive plan does guide that to some extent. And
So what you said is that the community benefits with those added bonuses, their payments or additional benefits are tied to their impacts.
so yeah, it's they're intended to mitigate the additional density, and whether, let's see, it's good to give a good
So
example.
that indicates
So, like,
that there is a nexus, to be clear.
there is intended to be a nexus, and then it also sort of goes to the community priorities as well. So for instance, if you're in Roslyn, you know, Roslyn has a plan, and in that sector plan, it says, you know, we want to have public art, we want to transform our transportation and pedestrian facilities, and we want to prioritize affordable housing. Each sector plan can have a slightly different mix. And if you don't have a sector plan, you kind of default back to the comp plan, and that can have a different mix. So a typical project in Roslyn would have a heavy affordable housing effort to the extent that we can, and often on site if possible. That was the preference in that plan. A very heavy transportation safety, you know, infrastructure, whether it's pedestrian bridges being changed or intersections being changed, or different lights. Usually some public art piece, you know, and that can go into a fund if there's not an immediate spot for it. And then it may vary a little bit, like a park element or a stormwater element could also be, you know, above and beyond. So it's a bit of a negotiation, and I think there are some farther out jurisdictions that often do it like as a proffer system where there's literally a menu of prices. And the farther in you are, the more infill you're doing, the less that really works all that well, is my understanding generally. But that doesn't mean we can't explain a little bit more like how we get to those numbers. And I think you'll see in the July meeting on One Roslyn, for instance, right? Like the underlying value of that project has shifted, the underlying real estate value. So the elements that are in that agreement, in those site plan conditions, will shift a little bit as well. So, you know, and that typically happens if a site plan has sat for a decade, you may revisit the elements. If it's been only a couple of years, you wouldn't typically.
I guess that's where some of my confusion comes in, because you're mentioning when the real estate valuation drops, then there's less of an expectation by said entity to provide money to the jurisdiction. Now, if it's truly on impacts, it should be based on the actual valuation of the impacts. So it's interesting seeing that, no, this is about impacts, but also it's kind of not about impacts. And if
It's
the value
mitigating.
drops.
Yeah, it's about mitigating. So it's not a one-to-one. You know, this like again, so a proffer system would say you've added 100 apartments, and so that's on average 13.6 children, and so you need to pay for one classroom. You know, and it's like a calculation. That's not the way we've done it, and historically we've gotten a better mix of value created as a result. But we need to explain that a little bit better, because it feels sometimes mysterious to folks, and particularly when it changes. You know, if a site plan existed, or like Marriott, you know, it existed more than 10 years ago, and then it's expired, and now we're going to start over at some point, right? So Yes.
But I mean, it's a negotiation and so things change. So it makes sense to me to, but as I understand it, this is a system that was authorized by the state legislature for, just for Arlington or for all of the Northern Virginia area?
I think it's just within the purview of the, just like Fairfax can have their proffer system, we can do it our way, so, we compare and contrast and look, is somebody else getting a better deal? That happens all the time. But I think it's also, if a site plan has been adopted, it has site plan conditions associated with it. It's rare that you go back and switch those if the project has been built. So one example was for Gateway Park, for instance, the project that became the CoStar project had the, what do you call it? Observation deck. That was negotiated as a benefit.
Yeah.
Very thoroughly. It's in a plan that was built. And the board took an action 2 years ago, year and a half ago, to shift that to make an amendment to that. And that's pretty unusual. More often it's just in there and then you're expected to do it when the project gets built, or if it's been 10, 20, 30 years and no project has gotten built, then you may start.
So in that instance, was there a nexus between the money that was paid to Gateway Park and that building?
Yeah, so it's in the Roslyn sector plan, and that community benefit was about public space. And so, it's imperfect, and you can vote your board out if you don't like what we decided on it. It wasn't a perfect one, but the decision was it was worth making that trade-off right now to move Gateway Park up a decade and get that community amenity at ground level, which is where people really are using it most. And that's kind of how it changed.
I guess part of my skepticism in this is I've really witnessed how it's caused a bit of, I don't like using the word dysfunction, but I'm from Crystal City where there's all those ongoing fights about the Crystal City Underground. And the underground as a public asset was created in a very similar way to that lookout.
Yeah.
Again, when those were created decades ago, nobody who's in government now is responsible for what happened 40 years ago. But you can see kind of like the long-term implications when you have those forms of like public access benefits in structures that will not last forever. Yeah, I know a lot of the new stuff we're seeing out of like, I don't know, Arlington One, Balsam One don't include exactly those like, oh, you're going to have an observation deck on top of the building. They're not including that. But I guess it's kind of like a cautionary tale a little bit.
Yeah, and things change, right?
Yeah.
So I think Underground's a great example. That at the time, and I think in Roslyn, the pedestrian bridges, like those were community benefits. They were not cheap to build, right? Like that was the 1960s, 70s vision of the Jetsons and everything. And it's a cool vision, it looks pretty cool on paper, but it didn't, it served its useful life, and then that's not where our priority is going forward. And so that's a natural part of a community, evolving, and most of these projects are going to last 30 years, 50 years, so there's time to adjust them again, but we make the best choice that we can in the near term.
Yeah, I was gonna say, how do we know that, or what is the reason why the profit system doesn't work here? And how do we know what we're achieving better
Yeah.
than what the.
Yeah, and I think that's what we need staff to try to explain a little bit more as we go into, and again, I think this July meeting will have like a few opportunities to do that. One of the things that, my understanding, the proffers works better when you've got blank land, right? So there's no building there today. If you add a building, you're gonna need this much stormwater, or you're gonna need this much road capacity, you're gonna need this much school capacity, that sort of thing. For us, it depends a little bit on what, where we are in our cycles, right? So like right now, we need recreation centers at some point more than we need schools, for instance, right? You could envision a project that might shift that, but it would have to be a really, really big project. And so for us, it's more about each of the sites are pretty specific. Like each of the neighborhoods are a little bit different. If you're in Madison Manor or you're in Crystal City, what you want to negotiate is very different. and what's of interest to the community is very different. If you've got a super tall building that's already there versus, you know, the small parking lot that you're reconfiguring, it's just different. So so it's on the planning staff to convince the board over and over that we are getting the, you know, at least as good a deal or a better deal than we were with proffers. And then we would be if we had proffers. And so far that they've been successful. But again, we'd like to get that a little bit more, you know, knowable for the community. So there's not that element of like, what?
Yeah.
So
I wonder-
the benefit, oh, go ahead.
So I'm wondering if we had a list of options, but that menu could change. In other words, we could say, we know we don't need this, this is off the list. Projects in this area.
Yeah.
There's other ones.
And most of the sector plans do have sort of a prioritized list. And again, it's going to depend a little bit on the scale of the project. And if it's a by right project, there's nothing,
Well,
you know,
there's
there's
not-
no community
no.
benefit, right? So it's also
There's
depending.
no
on
negotiation.
Right. You know, and I think another element of that is our green building, you know, policy is a little bit outdated, a lot outdated, and needs to be refreshed. And we're sort of working on it, but the economics are tight in a way that, you know, how that comes out is still TBD. But like right now, if you do LEED Gold, you get a bonus density. It's a little bit.
Can the nexus between the benefits and the project be so broad that it's such as, you know, we need to improve our stormwater infrastructure and therefore, you know, make a payment to this, even if the project itself does not have particular impact on the storm.
It could be that that would be pretty atypical. So there'd have to be some connection drawn to it. But I mean, I think, for instance, all of us are paying a little more for stormwater now than
Yeah, we are.
we were even in 1960, right? Because we realized that it's
Well, and with the new utility.
right. But the reason we have the new utility is like there's a need because both the way we designed it doesn't scale fully, and the intensity of storms, as we've seen lately, is increasing as well. So, I mean, most projects have a pretty significant baseline of stormwater requirements. So any project that's being built today is going to be better stormwater wise than it was before. And I guess that's the other study that you guys should keep an eye on this fall is the low residential study. So for the
Oh, yeah. Can we
70
talk about that?
yeah, sure. So for the 70%-ish land area that is still zoned single family home or low residential, depending on where you are in the missing middle drama and evolution. Right now, depending on the zoning category you have different lot coverage requirements. So like if you're on an R5 site, it gets up to like 56% coverage is allowed. And then there's a bunch of exceptions. So if you have a patio, it can be accepted. If you have a sidewalk, it can be accepted. If you have a porch. And so, and in particular, if you add on to things in small bits over time, we've seen some examples where folks have gotten to basically 95% coverage of their lot between the basketball court and the, you know, the porch and the driveway and everything else. And so there's been a conversation for a long time. The last time we looked at lot coverage was in 2005. And it was excruciating and painful. So people haven't really wanted to look at it. But I think as between the stormwater utility and the tree canopy conversations and increasing our stormwater requirements for each base project, you begin to see on those residential sites, you know, that a developer will take all the trees down, put as big a house as possible, and then you've got all the concrete structures for the stormwater, which are great for stormwater, but they leave you no plantable area to put trees back. And so I think that the stormwater utility actually was very, very helpful. Stormwater utility and then the tree survey update came together in November last year to say, okay, Houston, we do have a problem. And so we need to start thinking about this. So the theory and the work that the staff is embarking on this summer is from a 2D version. so you're looking from above. We're not going to look at topography just yet. So there are other rules about topography, but that we're going to look at, could you just have an impervious limit instead of a lot coverage of the main house and then all these other exceptions? And or could you have some flexibility about setbacks and side yards in order to move the main structure so you could get more of a depth of plantable area either on the side or in the back or the front? So those are the kinds of questions that we've sent them off to look at. And then they'll come back with, some ideas of what could be done and how much disruption and difficulty it is for how many homeowners across the county. Because essentially, as you change those rules, even though I think we all have the sense it needs to be tighter over time, as you change those rules, it changes whether you put the pool in that you were planning to put in, or whether you can, expand your sunroom, or whether your lot is conforming to the zoning code or is now not conforming. So that's some pretty important work as well. And I think that dovetails with, the Cherrydale Park question of natural infrastructure. It also dovetails with some of the overland relief properties. And, I think we're at a stage now where we've, 7 or 8 we have of those overland properties. Most of them have been, kind of restored to a baseline. And now we need to look at how they're functioning from a stormwater perspective and then what we want to use them for, whether it's from a park.
Well, we're 5 minutes over, but I have one more question.
And you're the chair. You got to.
And Alex has a question.
Go ahead. Sure. I'd like to ask you a little bit about the proposed VHC site on
Yeah.
South Carlton Square.
Sure.
And the nexus here is because it's going to be adjacent to Long Branch Park.
Yep.
I was around on a different commission when all that went down, of course. And
Which first time, with the hospital or with the acquisition?
with the switch,
In 16.
with the transfer.
Yeah. In 2016.
From, I guess it was.
It was from VHC.
Edison, yeah, from
Yeah.
VHC to the county,
Right.
and then the counties. I think it's the best phrase to put it is paralysis by analysis. Basically sitting on this site for 5 years, 6 years, with very little county use, very minor use of storage of vehicles and some material storage, but not really much else. And I'm certainly not going to opine about the proposed use of it now, more about this has really been a missed opportunity for the county that we here on the commission and through the various other committees that we sit on, the enormous need the county has for all kinds of public uses.
Yeah.
And we talked to staff, they also talked about how we're also running out of places just to put stuff,
Yeah.
equipment, material, vehicles, and this is becoming a big problem. And it's starting to affect how we use, say, the Buck property. That we have buses, and that's become controversial with folks who are right there. And the county just made kind of a mess of us by just not doing anything with it substantial for the better part of a half a decade. And I mean, the mental health facility has its potential. I view also this as a really lost opportunity to expand Long Branch Park. And I don't know whether that's even possible now with the proposed lease, but I do wish the county would seriously, because it is a goal to maybe not take a big chunk of it, but at least some of it, and add some space to the edge of the pond there. That's an important natural resource for the county, and to add some acreage.
Yeah, and I was on JFAC when that little swap was happening and got a chance to go deep on it. I think the idea of ability to traverse that and to have green space that does connect to Long Branch, and ideally also to the elementary school and to the neighborhood, has been present through all of those calculations and considerations. we don't have the design yet. It is overdue, but it's imminent. That may pop up in July or September as well. The proposal is not to lease the whole site. It would be a portion of it. And then the hope is that we can at the same time build, additional parking that will serve Long Branch, and then additional trail connectivity that can be ADA accessible. So all of our nature centers, the challenge is the ADA accessibility. Since they were like little cabins by the stream, they naturally are not really very accessible. And they're in riparian zones by definition. So, and we've talked even about like, could you rebuild Long Branch up, have the nature center be adjacent, and then have the trails down. That's probably a little ways off, but the connectivity for sure is part of it. It's part of the goal too of the mental health hospital. Like that's going to be an inpatient facility, and the idea is to have a connectivity to the green space because that's known to be very healing. And so there'll be some, kind of controlled green spaces, but then there'll be sort of a visible. So once, that's kind of gotten stuck in some financing and market issues with costs coming back because they're, wow. So I think as soon as we get that final proposal, then we'll be able to see. And I think there's some preliminary, which Civic Association. Jason?
I'm knowledgeable about this somewhat because my son goes to the elementary.
Oh, gotcha.
It is a hot topic.
Yes, of course. I'm not talking over there. Yeah. So Glen Carlin, which is like the most adjacent, because they've been really deeply involved with it, and they can probably draw you the map from their own heads. I can't, but it's basically closer to the middle school. There's the parking deck, and then the hospital, and then I would envision some trails connecting back to Long Branch between the Glen Carlin. And then to your bigger point about managing stuff in the county, the big elephant in the room is the trade center, which is down in Arlington and is like, duct tape, chewing gum, and like really strange uses all connected together, which reflects, again, because we are an infill kind of community and we've been growing organically. It's a lot of stuff in a really small place.
And it's spilling over to other places. I mean, we've heard from people that the county uses Douglas Park. For the park in the Douglas Park neighborhood for a lot of materials.
Really? Let me know about that if that's happening. That probably should not be happening.
And so, there's, you gotta put this stuff somewhere.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the county also needs to make these major exchanges.
Yeah.
Gotta do something.
Right. Right.
And
It just sometimes takes a
do it.
little, bit of time, and it also hit when all of our bonding capacity was going to schools to meet the seat requirements that had exploded. So we're a little behind on a lot of the county projects, trade center included. And they're really, really expensive. So there's, a little bit of, can you figure out how to have a combined bus network before you change it? Because that would really change how many parking spaces. So there's been some studies, and some of those have been shared during the CIP analysis. But it's going to be a couple more iterations. And it's frankly, we're not yet to the point where it is the most immediate need. We have a library and a fire station that are higher priority than that right now. And we only have so much bonding capacity, even when we are floating bonds.
There's a lot of tension and a lot of.
Yeah.
Well, anything else before? So I just wanted to circle back to where we started, which was the climate action plan.
Yeah.
And the position that Jennifer already holds, and how excited we were when that first started. That seemed to be working.
I think so. Yeah. I think her position and really a lot of these pain points and efforts have a lot to do with interdisciplinary and interdepartmental work, and that, all the easy stuff, just like all the easy sites for development in Arlington have been developed, like all the easy stuff has been done. And now the things that have been frustrating us, whether it's, where you're storing the light poles or, how you're addressing the climate, they really require multiple departments to work well together, which is frankly, the low residential study. I'm very excited about the topic, but it's also very, very cool because it's really putting DES and CBHD together to really think hard, and with parks as well. So to think hard about those things. And that's where the best solutions really come. But it's hard to make that happen sometimes.
Yeah.
So I think one of Jennifer Fioretti's real amazing gifts is the time she's been in the county. She's been in all of those stacks. So she's able to sort of be the conductor and get all the instruments flowing together. The budgets are going to be tight, so she gets to be real creative, but she's got some stuff. I think that'll be in July or September too. Some new climate leadership type of activities. The action plan is getting going, kind of working on rejiggering energy masters to be more of a climate masters kind of thing, working with schools. And then gas powered leaf blowers, everybody's favorite topic. We're gonna do it. We're gonna figure that one out.
Great. Well, I just can't thank you enough for being
Sure.
here. You're welcome to stay for the wonderful biophilia presentation.
For a little bit, I was like, David's newest and greatest.
So, thank you. Thank you so much.
And feel free to reach out anytime. And really, please be the eyes and ears because we have a lot of people in Arlington and we have 5 board members, so we don't speak to everybody else. You're going to notice something that doesn't make sense or that could be better explained. Just let us know. Try to get to it.
Thank you. Yeah, and thank you for all your hard work. I know it's not a 9-to-5 job. Okay, are we ready for the next topic?
So,
Great. I'd like to take this moment to introduce David Howell. He was a member of our commission from 2016 to 2022. He has been on the Forestry and Natural Resources Commission from 2018 until now. And he was the liaison to this commission. And with Carolyn this year, he spearheaded the volunteer initiative for Arlington to commit to urban nature and join the Biophilic Cities Network. He also happens to be an Arlington Regional Master Naturalist and a wildlife photographer, having documented over 350 species in Arlington alone. So I've had this presentation, or not this version, I had one a few years ago. I'm very excited to have it. Thank you, David.
Sure. And thank you, and thanks to Melissa. And
Yes,
Marco
thank you.
For some reason, it wasn't here between Apple and Microsoft. Would it make sense for me to?
Sure.
So this is, this is an updated revised version. So that's kind of in 3 parts. There's a sort of a prologue and then an epilogue about what happened in more recent years. And so I guess that means the middle part is the blog. So here we go. Is that full screen?
Yeah.
Okay. This can work. Yeah, okay. All right, so let's just go with definition. Biophilia is from Greek, just like Philadelphia is from Greek. Love of life, brother, city of brother, love, you get that, that's a lot of Greek. It was first sort of talked about as a concept by Eric Fromm in the 60s as a recognized psychological attraction to things that are alive. And in the 80s, E.O. Wilson, who some of you may have heard of, a really famous biologist, actually recognized that this is something that there was a pattern and it was human-wide and that perhaps was genetically based. And that kind of got people thinking along the lines that maybe there's things behind what we do and what we see and how we act that we aren't completely understanding. So Nowadays, in various contexts, like urban planning and other fields, it just basically means that innate human affinity for nature. So this is the prologue part. So we do connect with nature in many ways. We observe it. We sometimes use nature as design themes for art. We imitate it. Especially if any of you have ever been to Burning Man, you might recognize the race. And then, we totemize it. But we also know that nature can just be beautiful, and nature can be awe-inspiring. By the way, all these photos are taken in Arlington. I was in Arlington when I took them. I say that because this actually the nest was in a big tree in the median
I was wondering.
of the parkway. And I was in Arlington, but I was shooting over the parkway. Captivating. Hello. And it can be your calendar if you want it to be. But you can also learn from nature. You can both see and hear a frog croak. You could, those of you who are scientists, note the standing waves, sound waves that are actually in this surface tension of the water. That whatever frequency that is, that's represented with standing waves. You can have some visual artistry. This is an eastern amberwing, the only dragonfly that we have where the membranes are uniformly colored, tinted. So it casts a stained glass window type shadow. That's in Glen Carlin, by the way. So this one is a 6-spotted fishing spider. You know that arachnids don't have a head. They have a cephalothorax where the head and thorax are mixed in an abdomen. All the legs are connected to the thorax. So what you see in the surface tension is the weight distribution of the spider's weight on the surface of the water. And the shapes tell you how much weight each one of those is carrying. And you can see that the back legs are more oval shape and larger because they've got all the weight of the abdomen on that end front. They're small and circular because they don't. So nature can just be quiet. We all need that. But that's nice about nature, but that's not the real issue when it comes to humans. We evolved in and with nature, and we're still innately into. Humans have genetic traits that respond to natural stimuli, whether you know it or not, which includes sound, smells, sights, of course, tactile sensations. And these involve all the senses, and in particular, affect us substantively in the nervous system and circulatory system. So humans have adapted culturally and socially within large groups. And now urbanism is the primary, really just in the last 250 years, has skyrocketed as the primary mode of living for many, many people in these countries. I guess that's one. Took out that to the middle of the plane. Commercial plane. I wasn't violating any airspace rules. But as you know, urban areas can separate nature. So the biophilic city concept is the idea that an urban jurisdiction would recognize the importance of natural spaces of residents and intentionally design and designate and prioritize natural spaces in everything it does in terms of planning and development. And for these cities and counties, it's a strategic perspective, really. It's not a thing. It's a perspective, an overarching approach to plans, policies, programs, and resource applications. Biophilic community is one in which natural space is everyday space for people, and experience in nature is both readily available, practiced on a regular basis. Around the world, leaders and residents in all urban areas are beginning to recognize how important this is, and both the value and vulnerability of nature. So they're beginning to formalize their commitments to urban nature, both as an expression of identity and also guideline for development. Biophilic Cities Project was founded in 2012 by Tim Beatley. His father was the mayor of Alexandria quite a number of years. The name sounds familiar. And the project is a .org. It's a clearinghouse for information and guidance, and a basis for having conferences. They have an extremely large amount of information on their website. They bring people together from all different walks and to help them figure out how to do things better and how to improve jurisdictions. Here are some of the examples, some of the cities worldwide that have already signed up and made a commitment to be a partner in the international network. You can't do it lightly. You have to make a commitment, like a resolution or something like that, and then have to submit a plan which kind of outlines what you're going to pay attention to and what you're going to prioritize. Now, we had in the public spaces master plan, which you're all very familiar with, there was a recommendation to look into this at the time, early 2019, to look into it, and so we did look into it. And the board acted very quickly, which we'll get to it. So how this matters, it's human-centered. We think a lot about climate, and climate has impacts on humans and on space. And biophilia, likewise, has, when you create biophilic situations, you create natural solutions to physical problems, but you also are dealing with something that directly benefits individuals. It's now been around long enough, maybe almost 35, 40 years as a field that people are doing serious research on, from healthcare to child development. And so it's substantiated fairly down. And it's something that adds extra value to other things that you do in urban space, and also extra benefits to all the people under the rubric that you might see written here and there as livability. So I'm going to quickly go through these 6 categories, outline some of the ways that it matters. Biophilic features are complementary to all the environmental laws that we now have to comply with. But it's true that many of the technical standards can be achieved without also being biophilic. However, natural solutions as a supplement or a complement or the core of a solution can enhance effectiveness and make responses better. It also provides benefits to individuals. A planted stormwater area might do almost as good a job as a concrete wall, but it certainly would be a lot more biophilic and have a better impact on people around it. I put in the bottom picture, the top one's also about part. I put in the bottom picture, which I borrowed from designers, Cardinal Elementary School, because it is not only net zero and biophilic inside. The trees haven't grown up enough outside to start getting that canopy sense yet. But from where the picture is taken, we now have a 5 million gallon stormwater vault, which is a significant advantage for all the neighborhoods downstream. And where the water can come in from all the neighborhoods upstream and be held in that reservoir and let out more slowly so we don't have the impacts of heavy storms. So you can combine all these things in a particular design. Health and well-being, this is what really at the heart of it. You think about benefits to individuals. Again, very well documented in a number of areas. Key areas for everyday life, blood pressure, cortisol levels, heart rate. Everybody in urban areas has some amount of stress. These things all are affected or reduced. Time to chill in natural spaces. Both general wellness and better mental focus and that kind of thing. In a medical treatment context, studies have shown that it reduces the amount of time that people stay after surgery. They're ready to go sooner if they have space where they can see nature and or interior conditions in their rooms. They're like natural wood and other analogies for nature. They have less demand for pain medication, and they have better attitude. And that also applies to all the others around them who may also be stressed, their family members and medical staff. All this translates into improved revenue for hospitals. They have better turnover of people doing better, and they can have more patients in the space they have, and as well as better staff retention. Topic related to that later. Similarly, education. Classroom productivity is improved by kids being able to get out in nature and just have that freedom that you have in a natural space. That can also be replicated by the way you design interior space, as it's true in some of the, at least partly true in some of the newer schools that we have, like Food and Discovery and Cardinal. Nobody does it better when it comes to nature providing opportunities to explore and discover, have curiosity, and it boosts self-esteem and self-confidence to be in those unstructured situations. And that's partly because it's dynamic and complex and has rhythms and patterns and sounds and smells that stimulate kids in many ways that they don't get, certainly not in front of screens at home. So it's also been shown to help particularly kids with performance anxiety and attention deficit, help them focus and help them dial back a little bit in transitions, that kind of thing. And of course, there are the sort of on the ground practical or curriculum related, sort of the culture of education related, like teaching responsibility and stewardship, and then all the subjects that you typically have, biology, ecology, climate change. So having nature closer to people means people are closer to nature. That's not just physical, but psychologically as well. So it brings awareness, discovery, appreciation, learning appreciation, which leads then to caring and stewardship, which is something you want in the population. Because keeping up natural spaces in an urban area it takes energy, it takes volunteers, it takes by everyone, private homeowners and those who use parks and that kind of thing. But biodiversity is a very important indicator of the health of any urban area, and citizen science, which is citizens gathering data to put into databases, which there are quite a few now. Those are mined by scientists, and so it's an extender of the reach of the science community. Learn more about the changes that are happening in our physical spaces. Economics and business. Now, I think that retailers and marketers and advertisers have known for a long, long time that nature sells. Maybe they didn't know why, or maybe they didn't care why, but when you think about any amount of time that some of you may actually have time to watch TV, if you see ads for cars, pharmaceuticals, insurance, pretty much anything, there's always these pristine natural background. Cars for sure. They're always driving around out in the wilderness. And I'm like grinding my teeth, and why are they willing to do that? But it sells. It does sell. The presence of nature has economic value in almost every way that you can look at it. Now, in terms of institutional context, yes, it contributes to employer performance, employee performance, and student performance. It fosters enhancements to profits by improving recruitment, retention, resilience, presentism, productivity. Presentism is when you're there, you're actually there. Which, if you think about the workplace, not always guaranteed. But the restorative aspects of breaks, walking around out in a little bit of nature are very important. Then, as we know, it improves. You can see it in the values in the advertising. It improves the desirability of investments. Locations like maybe Amazon. So natural space is also better for retail, customer engagement, and customer satisfaction. So these are all quantifiable, and as are tax revenue, property values, proximity to parks, proximity to natural areas, always raises the value. And finally, in this category, in this group of 6, sharing nature promotes pride and common interest. Natural spaces, features are preferred places for many things to happen, like the Turtle Festival in Lumont Park.
Didn't know we had a turtle festival.
Well, since COVID, they haven't done it, but they used to have a turtle trot. It was a 2K race for parents and kids and all kinds of other
Oh, I
activities.
thought you were gonna say for the turtle.
No. But that's very insightful of you, because right there, that is also from the same event. That is a turtle race at that same event. And
Okay.
so turtles don't really know which lane they're in. So you have to draw a circle and put them in the middle and just see which one gets to wherever the circle is. So it's fun.
That he was, yeah.
Yeah, I know, we did. So where am I now? Okay, so, I just want to also point out, the bottom picture, if you haven't been to Met Park, then it's worth it. It's a block east of Costco. That's the easiest way to describe it. The 2 buildings on the bigger buildings on the left and center are the first 2 buildings of the Amazon HQ2. But it's a 2.5 acre park. Designed. Marco was in charge of this, so we should give him a round of applause. With a very good contractor, which is now they just think they're no longer Jones Corner operations. They're just now called Corner Operations.
Field operations.
Field operations. Okay. Anyway, they do essentially natural biophilic parks. I think they did the High Line in New York, right?
Yep. And they also worked on Gateway Park.
And they're selected for Gateway. So anyway, go there.
Oh, no, they worked on the park master plan for Gateway Park.
So this whole area, well, there's a grassy gathering area, but it's all meandering pathways with grasses, flowering plants, trees, all native. It's all on top of a parking garage. And it's all got irrigation throughout it and a staff to tend it. A year and a half after it was planted, I went over there in September, and in an hour and a half, I got like 16 species of pollinators and birds just flying around and everything that they plant. So, yeah, money helps. So the last point here, and I think it's really important, is valuing nature in the community promotes volunteers and stewardship of spaces. That not only improves your outcomes, but it also lowers public costs. As everyone who's in one of the local organizations that does this kind of work, you can, if you put the state of Virginia valuation on an hour of work by volunteers, you're getting up into the tens and twenties, and I don't know how much, thousands and thousands of dollars worth of volunteer efforts, pulling invasive plants and doing all kinds of things. The picture on the bottom is September of 23, the ribbon cutting for the opening of Falls Development Park. And there's three board members. Well, Takas is peeking in from the left there. And also on the right side, not counting Eileen Winquist, yes, the three current or former PRC members. Bill Gregory's on next to Christian. So anyway, not to dwell. So biophilia matters to Arlington, partly because we have a heritage of great parks and open spaces, but also because we have serious challenges we really have to pay attention to. It's partly related to climate change, and it's partly related to our increased density. It's partly related to just what you have to do to conserve the quality spaces that we have. I don't know why that takes me. I do something weird.
So if you are reading that image, maybe.
Okay.
Don't, man.
Okay, so I'll tell you what it is. So butterfly is the Eastern tiger swallowtail female state butterfly, and the other one is the cardinal, which is the state bird. So anyway, things you know well. The population is anticipated to grow in the next 25 years by almost a third. This is based on the last profile predictions. And that will increase the density by several thousand, and most of that will happen along the corridors and around near the corridors. And we've done pretty well so far with that. It meshes nicely with efficiencies. But you have to be really careful. That's why some of these issues like lot coverage and things like that, they're so important right now as we sort of transition further. Tree canopy is below the 40% goal, which is in, I think, both the PSMP and the IFNR. So without sustained commitments, we're in danger of losing not only the amount of space we have, but in fact, the per capita allocation space. If you think about the amount of green space that we have right now, and then you add 30%, then what's the per capita loading on the parks that we have? That's about in an equity sense, it's about where they are, but in a capability sense, it's about how much they can take. So how would we be biophilic? This is kind of where Carolyn was with doing our campaign in 2019. Ensuring, one way would be to ensure nature is a key element in our strategic vision, plans, policies, and practices. Another is about investing in nature with as a fiscal priority, including protection and preservation, but also land acquisition, which I know is something that this commission has always been very concerned about. And it's hard to do in an area that's so built and so highly valued, land values. And also to do it the way, to do what the county does in a way that's biophilic design, which we have seen quite a bit of that with the aquatic center and community center, schools and sort of things. So that's coming. And also encouraging actions to enhance the built environment. This is where we get into the discussion. Nature of the space. So this photo at the bottom actually was taken from that the building in Roslyn that now was acquired by a company that paid for Gateway Park. Susan, what was it? Yeah, it was 13 million, so that they wouldn't have to share their top floor. But maybe it's worth it. I've been in that top floor, of course, so maybe the new Gateway Park will be better than the top floor. So I'm just going to be quiet for a minute and let you read these statements, which are from the resolution. I think they're very good. Okay. So now, just to sum up, before we go on to the epilogue, living in proximity to nature makes people happier and healthier and more productive. Access to nature is elemental to social equity, identity. Having urban nature requires proactive efforts. Preserve and enhance natural spaces to create natural features. What we're always talking to developers about. Viability planning and design can bring tangible benefits, sustainable county and emergency. County board did a really good job by making this commitment as one of those. Now, I'm just going to go through these next few quickly. Just this is more like a toolbox for all of you in case you want to follow up on any of this. So the upper left is the homepage of the Biophilic Cities project website, which is extremely nice. That's Biophilic Cities, all one word, put you there. Banner categories are the network resources. That's the journal, number of other tools. They have everything from studies on the policies that different cities have to this kind of thing, to actual films about projects around the world. The lower one is the partner page for Arlington County. That if you went to the network, the second category in the banner, but down to partners, we first in the alphabet. So partners, so we're the first one. So you can go and look what Arlington's put, what Arlington has put in there. Chris Kreider in the design, urban design team at CPHD, and Irina Laser from park planning, are the two liaisons to the places. Things on that website. The other two other images on the right side are from two different reports by a company called Terrapin Bright Green, all of them again, terrapinbrightgreen.com. They're an international consulting firm, works with cities, corporations, even nations, about everything from energy to environment to biodiversity to biophilia. And they have a number in their publication section on the website. They have quite a few really groundbreaking types of work. And I'm just going to pass around. This is the front page for each, just so you know which one it is, with just a couple of conservative pages to show you sort of what the content is of some this way. So, but I think that so biophiliccities.org, terrapinbrightgreen.com. There are two great resources if you're only going to look at those. That's now, as far as Arlington, we now have, since thanks to Jeff Fioretti, just since a few months ago, we now have a Arlington homepage on the county website. And the little image on the left side is the top of that page. And then the bigger image on the right side is the rest of that page, because I couldn't fit it on landscape shape. But there's, certain basic categories of things that you can pursue by going to that. And including the middle and on the bottom, just like connect you right to the Blackfield Cities website. Under project examples and resources, the bottom right, there are a number of different images of some places where around Arlington where things have been improved with biphilic design. And also at the bottom, there are 4 papers that I wrote as part of the development issue back in 2019. We're also seeing in the last 6 years, biophilic design and biophilia generally as a concept in getting into all of the official documents as the county board said should happen. Again, as I pointed out, this is a thematic overlay to all the things we do, more about how you do it than what you do. So it needs to be part of everything we do, just like paying attention to climate. It's to be part of everything we do. So the little box on the upper left is the first strategic direction out of the Forestry and Resource Plan. And it talks about protecting tree canopy, natural areas, and biophilic feature. There's more about that, of course, in that plan, but that's just an example. The upper right is I happen to know page 100 out of the Pentagon City Sector Plan. Reference to. And I chose this because this is very good. If you're going to look at one page out of the whole thing, the chart and the Venn diagram talk about how biophilia, sustainability, and resilience overlap, mutually reinforce, but are different. And it's really important because this document, I was so happy to see this in the guiding document, which is 150 pages for the Pentagon City area. It talks about that the biophilic design, biophilia is about human experience in nature. It's about the human interaction in nature. And it goes hand in hand with taking care of the environment, biodiversity, climate resilience and that kind of thing, but it's a different thing. So, you know, you can keep them all in your head together. They all work together nicely, but it's good to recognize how. Earlier, you're talking about comp plan. There are a couple of questions about the comp plan update. Well, comp plan is an assembly of 12 master plans. They're not all called master plans, I mean, they are, that's what they were. The S&P, stormwater plan, what the housing plan, land use plan, all those kinds of things. Those get updated on their own schedule. Right now, we're updating transportation. The comp plan is what is just a group of priorities that were listed back, you know, whatever it was that they did it last. So it's pretty long time. But this time it's going to happen differently. Gary, you're the representative. Yeah. So for the first time, there's actually going to be a chapter. There's actually going to be a document, which is an introduction. I like to call it a strategic nose. It's going to go over all the 12 plans that, you know, that will help shape them. Now, what this is in the lower box is that the county has decided, the team that's doing this update at a CPHD, they're using the American Planning Association guiding principles, which is sort of a template that APA put out there, jurisdictions to use as a starting point. They're using these for the starting point for our introduction, for the guiding principles that form sort of the backbone of the introduction. And the middle one on the top, and I'm sorry it's small to see, but some of you might be able to see, harmony with nature. And it reads, ensure that the contributions of natural resources to human well-being are explicitly recognized and valued, and that maintaining their health is a primary objective. So I think that's a good starting place. Now, just to wrap up here, I just wanted to show you a few examples. This top slide, there in the terrapin bright green, 14 patterns of biophilic design. They talk about nature in the space, analogs, and nature of the space. So the upper left is natural analogs, is an analog. In other words, it's a design which you could have in a building or as part of landscaping or inside that reminds you, either with its materials or organic shapes, that kind of thing, reminds you of nature. The upper right is, you know, you can have a green roof and it wouldn't be biophilic if nobody went up there, but obviously because of the way this is set up, it's gardens. People spend time there. So that's in Chicago, by the way. The lower right is terraces, planted terraces, which are obviously set up to be used as well as to be planted. And then the lower left is actually inside Love Around Community Center, looking out on 2 levels. Upper level going out, which is over the parking garage. But also the thing about the Love Around Center has natural analogs and interior design because they had to cut down a number of trees in order to build that underground parking garage to have so much surface area on top of it for pickleball and playgrounds, things like that. So they milled the trees that they cut from the site. And inside at the lower level, you can see the lower part of the picture. All of the public counter spaces for the services for signing up, you know, the desk, that you go to when you don't know where to go, and the park benches that are in there, in that space, the wall coverings, the paneling, those are all made from the wood that came from that site. Amazing. Okay, a couple more. We talked about Gateway Park. Here's the final design. That would be basically, yeah, between the Roslyn buildings and Key Bridge. Same place as it is now, but it's going to be great. Upper right is the Heights, which is the school that what used to be HB Woodlawn.
Still is.
It still is HB. That's the school, but not the building name. But it has a lot of biophilic elements on the roof and inside. Lower right is Longbridge Aquatic Center. Among other things, this is a great job of dealing with a really, really contaminated industrial site that had a lot of work in order to make it even possible to do anything there without bringing up so much contaminated material and letting it loose. It had to be done in a way that was very meticulous, I guess. But it's been planted now with grasslands and lots of other plants. And right across the train tracks to the right is Roach's Run, which is a natural area there that near the airport, where you can see all kinds of birds all the time. So this entire aquatic center, all the glass is bird friendly. Glass. It's also treated. It's two panes of glass with argon in between, argon gas center, and coated in a way to reduce thermal gain from the outside when it's warm, but also reduce loss of heat when it's cold outside. Bottom left is the other side of the Lover Run. Now, private development, or just two more here. Land Bay C and South Crystal City is up the upper left. This is 5 different buildings, but they've done a good job, I think, of connecting with what's already exists off the right, bottom right. A row of trees go down. If you go across the street, there's already a block-long park called Center Park, which a lot of people don't know about. But this is continuing connection with that park up between these buildings and whatever will be below them on the west side. There is land bays there that are, and also between these buildings. So it's creating a kind of a corridor with space coming up and down north and south. Upper right, that one's approved, not built yet. Not really built yet. Upper right is 2500 Wilson Boulevard, which has just finished the SPRC process and going to the board and carved out as a plaza right there. That's Clarendon Boulevard on the right. The addresses. Bottom right is, I guess it's called, it's the Marriott hotel site, but I guess it's called Marriott Gateway or something like that, or Roslyn Gateway. It's a combination of hotel and residential right on the river. So Key Bridge would be just to the right of that, and just to the bottom right would be Gateway Park. And then, of course, the Amazon Helix, Penn Place, 4 buildings, and it gotten different. The Helix has gotten different reviews. It's being kind of odd or spectacular, but it's like 22 stories, and it's gonna be planted with full-size trees. All that's about a 3-acre park that's in between those buildings, including a mountain stream and a pond. and a lot of other different planted areas. So it's going to be a lot of open space. And I had to throw this in just because it's the 10-year anniversary. This is in Milan, Italy. When you look at there's two towers like this, and they have large, very large reinforced balconies with extreme vegetation, you might say. And I had to put in the picture on the right because looking at it from a distance, you lose your sense of proportion. You can't tell how big those balconies really are. But it is something that started influencing tall building design in other countries, in the Netherlands, in China, and other places now to prove that, yeah, there are ways you can actually do this. You can have a vertical force. Fosco verticale means vertical. In Italian. So that's it. You like the show?
Yeah. So much for your years of leadership and by affiliate front. You're continuing to reap the benefits and to push forward. We do have a few things we want to discuss tonight. Are there any questions on the group? So we want to get to those. Are there any comments on the staff report? Anybody have any comments on the staff report? We have a nice report from William. Are there any comments on that? On the 55+. And Neil, thank you for all your service on so many liaison positions. I want to mention, this is Neil's last time with us in person. His last meeting will be next month, but he has served a full 6 years. So
Now you can come over to FNRP because there's no 6-year limit.
There we go.
If you switch FNRC.
are there any comments on any of the other ones? Otherwise, I want to get over to Dave. I think we're going to, since yours isn't going to the board until September, let's put that one below Boston 1 and 1 Roslyn, which are going in July. I think 1 Roslyn is pretty straightforward, but I think there's going to be an issue. Let's get right to it.
Yeah, I'll avoid too much of the controversy, but
Go right.
well, the long and short of it is that I have a very specific opinion when it comes to Ballston 1. The part of the community benefits, and I think part of the reason that it was discussed today is that I'm a bit skeptical of how community benefit agreements work. And one of the community benefits that was suggested as part of the Ballston 1 was some form of payment to benefit the nearby Ballston Wetlands Park. Now, I personally believe there needs to be some form of significant nexus between the project and its impacts and the thing that we are paying to benefit, be it infrastructure, be it housing, like affordable housing, be it parks. And because so much of the Ballston Wetlands Park is considered to be about stormwater mitigation, flood mitigation, etc., I need to see some evidence that the Ballston 1 project is contributing to worsened or increased stormwater. And from what I gathered at the hearing, the new structure, and I'm going to recap a little bit of what the project is for you guys. It's converting an office building that's 11, 12, 13 stories, and then tearing it down, keeping the parking garage, and then so there's no excavation, and then building about 5 or 6 stories of housing on top. So as a result, the new development is going to have less impermeable surface, less of lot coverage. It's actually going to, because there's going to be a kind of a donut in the middle with a courtyard, and less of the impermeable surface you saw with the older tower. It has glaze protected windows to prevent against bird strikes. It's going to reduce the shade that it casts upon the wetland. In effect, the new structure actually has a lower environmental impact than the existing structure. So I don't really see the need to push for a payment for the park. And I feel like in some ways asking for a payment in this context is less of a trying to take care of the impacts and more of how do we shake down this developer for something to benefit the parks. again, I'm saying my perception in this. So I kind of want to draft a letter that says we don't need any additional payment as part of community benefits for Ballston Park. The Ballston Wetlands Park as kind of the letter I want to draft in support of the project. I otherwise completely endorse the project. It is a no-brainer. It's
Yeah, and I'm of a similar opinion, because I think, tell me if I'm wrong, if we ask for the further payments, it also would drag out the timeline.
I can't speak to that.
Oh, okay.
I can't.
I feel like there's more negotiation or something like that. And I think some of the issues with these projects is that people will nitpick and ping at things just to keep dragging it out in hopes that there'll be less people coming to Arlington or getting into these projects.
And this is a conversion of an office building, which we have too many of at the moment, to housing, which we desperately need more of. So we should be as supportive of this project possible. In fact, this will result in more people enjoying and benefiting from the Wetlands Park.
Where did the idea for a payments to park originate?
I believe that, well, it was in the staff report. It was in the report that they had from the developer, which you mentioned it as a potential thing. And then I believe there are 3 documents that it was in. I can look up the third one.
Who did the developer offer it?
I will need to see what the chicken and egg was here, but all 3 of them suggested a payment as a form of way to get higher as a form of offsetting higher density.
Yeah, so that's part of the reason if they're asking for an additional like amount of density above what's like the standard, that's like part of like the public spaces like master plan. Like, some sort of public benefit as a result to gain that increase in, but I think they call it Florida.
I mean, this implies though that adding more people and adding more density is bad, when in fact adding more units is the good thing in this case. We need housing. We don't need that new office space. So I don't really want to see housing as this bad thing that we have to mitigate by accepting a pay.
Is what? So you're suggesting that there shouldn't be any requirement for them to have any public benefit?
In this one specific project, yes.
But this is not a by right project, right?
I believe, yes.
So, I guess my concern there is that, why should we let them have no, I mean, there is gonna be an impact. It may not be environmental, but it's gonna be, potentially people. There might be more kids in the area because of the project. Shouldn't they contribute to either to schools or to some other way in which housing is going to impact the county?
Can we ask for that as a rep of the Parks Board, as a Parks Board letter? Oh, instead of giving this money to the parks, you should be giving to schools. Is that something we can even ask? I don't know. I do not know.
It's in the realm of possibilities because it's like, it's broadly defined as a public benefit. So they're interpreting that as like the wetlands pond as a public benefit. Other developers have like built public space as part of their investment to the public benefit.
There are other community benefits that were listed other than the potential payment.
The low income housing,
There's definitely
Yeah.
housing.
that's also with the density, right?
But yeah,
Yeah.
why don't they, maybe they can give more money to, we should suggest they give more money to that benefit.
What does the Ballston master plan call for as far as like visions for like community benefits? Because those are usually outlined in the sector plans as well.
So the Ballston sector plan is from 19.
Excellent.
Love to hear
So
it.
very little, I would imagine.
So this was listed off in the applicant presentation, just potential community benefits. Creation, the community benefits listed were, it's a creation of a gateway building to Ballston, creation of shared use path on North Fairfax Drive. They are doing that. Adaptive reuse of existing underground structure, improve pedestrian access and safety, LEED Gold rating, affordable housing. And then the last thing that they listed was potential financial contribution to enhance Ballston Wetland Park.
Question for the park, how would the Parks Department use such a payment?
For the development of that space. I mean, it could be in any number of ways. It could be for maintenance purposes, it could be for expansion, it could be for other sorts of considerations, but it would be something that we would have to discuss further as a department and as the planning division.
So it'd be. the
Maintenance is going to be.
Right.
For any park or just that?
Well, it depends on how the site plan conditions are written. In certain areas and in certain projects, sometimes it just details for the betterment of parks and public spaces within the Roslyn area or within the Paulston area or whatever the case may be. In some cases, it's for a specific park, so it really depends on how it's being negotiated.
Has the developer expressed like a reticence to do this contribution? Or is this kind of just coming?
So this is coming from me.
Because I think based on the fiscal environment, I don't know that it makes sense for the county to be turning away any potential money that could be used for maintenance.
So and this is part of the reason I wanted to bring it up just to the greater board is, I mean, there's obviously diversity of opinions here, and I don't want to have any, of course, any letter that we sign off on. I mean, we could have a majority or minority opinion letter on this, or we could just not write one if there's really enough controversy in this. But I've used from as the person who is a representative of the Parks Commission on this SBRC meeting, that was my opinion and take on it. If I'm definitely the minority here and you guys don't think we should write a letter on this, or you want to write something that's different than what I said, we can, but I figured we'd go out and give a little bit of opinion on this. I don't know if we should hold any votes on this, but
No, we don't.
yeah, exactly. So I guess
Because this is just recommendation.
This is a thermometer,
One of, 10 recommendations that they get, and then the planning commission staff.
Was there an amount listed?
I think they may have said it verbally, but I don't quite recall. But they don't have it on any of
It's
these.
not.
It's not any of the, yeah, it's not on the paperwork.
So this is not a done deal yet.
Yes, that's why,
Yeah.
that's why our recommendation would have quite a bit of influence is because they haven't even put down a dollar amount.
I would also, that should be provided as part of the site plan conditions. Once it does come, they do come forward.
Well, that would be the fine, but I mean,
Right,
the proposed site would come out of the planning commission.
right.
Yeah, so, yeah, it is a bit odd that we don't know that after the second meeting.
I mean, unless they discussed site mitigation, site plan conditions and potential contribution amounts, because usually they do have that discussion.
Yeah.
It's a little odd that wasn't raised as part of this one, or maybe it was, and I haven't been tracking it, so I'm not
It's
sure.
It's still listed as.
Yeah.
Well, I know it's late and I know you have a 9 o'clock. And so we only had 10 minutes to discuss this. I have a suggestion. I think that Andrew and Melissa should go ahead and draft a letter, but get it done 2 weeks before our next meeting, so that we have 2 weeks for everybody to review it, and maybe a little bit of time for this issue to develop in the planning process, so we actually know if there is an amount. And depending on what you write in the letter, we could have a minority view and a majority view. That's just an idea. What do you guys think? Think that makes sense? Okay. All right, so that's what we'll do. And thank you both.
So the one thing to Andrew was saying is, I think it might be a letter saying it is important to us also to contribute to affordable housing community. That's an important objective that we should get lost.
Well,
Well,
let me make sure that when you write the letter, it's gonna be a comprehensive letter.
Is it gonna be about just our parks opinion, or is it?
It's gonna be a letter for me to sign on Park and Rec. And it's gonna say, we support the project because it has affordable housing, because it has bird-friendly glass, and all the other things that you listed off. And then we can say, but we have 2 opinions on that. Okay, somebody else was gonna say something.
I was just gonna say, I think if you focus on the fact that your original point, Andrew, was that the benefit should go directly toward the impact. And that's the main priority. And we, maybe a majority of people or whatever feel that the contributing to the park is not the most direct way. They should consider one of the other contributing more to one of the other public benefits that were listed.
Maybe affordable housing.
Yeah.
I mean, but we're the Parks Commission, so don't we have to advocate for?
And it's adjacent to a park.
It's very, very hard sometimes to connect impacts of a 328 unit residential building to any one particular thing.
Right.
So, I mean, we could try, but it's not.
Yeah, no, I'm just suggesting that they should think about that instead of just saying, oh, well, it should be go to the park because that's,
Next door.
nearby.
Well, I just want to remind everybody, we did do our charter recently, and we do have a provision in here on SPRCs as well as the other planning meetings. And it says, this is I'm quoting, commission members prioritize ecosystem sustainability during SPRC, LRPC, zoning commission, and PFRC meetings, including but not limited to stormwater management, the island commission, preserving and generating biophilic opportunities, enhancing biodiversity, and managing ecosystem health. So, we can talk about housing, but they're not going to listen to us on housing because that's not our charter. Our charter is what I just read out.
What I love about those documents is you can actually interpret them as broad as possible to say anything. For example, because more housing is being placed in this dense city, it means fewer trees are getting cut down in the suburbs at the edges of the DC metro area. I mean, you can say that you're benefiting intact ecosystems and biophilic living by doing that. They're great to use flexibly.
I do think if you're converting from an office space to residential facilities, you're thinking about like timing of when people are using the park. So like people are in their office from 9 to 5 and maybe there's a 5-minute breakout versus people who are living in this space and utilizing it at much higher rates. So I do think that justifies putting resources and that plot to maintenance of that park. So I do think that's something to consider as well, just given the use of the building.
I think like the thing to keep in mind is we wouldn't be asking for these provisions if they weren't exceeding the floor area ratio to begin with. So like it may be a smaller kind of footprint than the existing building, but they're still asking something far above what the standard is. So they need to provide some sort of reciprocal benefit for us to say, yes, we're going to allow you to build well above like the standard of what we usually.
So if it's like 100 units, they don't have to give us anything, but if it's 125, we're just going to say, oh yeah, well, there's obviously an impact on the park at 125 people that wouldn't exist if there was 100.
There's an existing standard.
No, they can build a certain amount. Let's say
I know
1
it's
acre,
long,
they can
but
build 5 stories. If they want 6 or 7, they have to pay for that.
Or are we
So-
doing that with the low affordable housing? Not clause, the affordable housing thing they put into these buildings, is that not part of the density or is this, they ask for even more than the usual?
It's more than usual. Yeah, it's not all going to affordable housing. No.
Okay, so there's that deficit then of you broke it above what you for the affordable housing, therefore there's more to pay, but it sounds like, correct?
Well, I mean, so Virginia is a by right state, so there's certain things that you can do without asking anybody. If you want to do more than that, you have to ask. And unlike Fairfax, this is what Susan was like, we have a negotiation system. So they're asking for increased density, so we say, well, okay, but give us bird-friendly glass and a contribution to the parks, affordable housing, and, it's a negotiation. And it references usually to the sector plan. But in this case, it's really old. So it's not a 1-for-1, like they don't give more affordable housing because of the increased density. That's what's ridiculous.
Yeah, I just didn't know, because I know other projects I've been on, it was a little white picture. I think it's gone. It felt like they had reached that, they had asked for that extra thing. It seems like for this project, they're asking for the extra thing, and I'm wondering why the extra thing is being asked for. But other projects I've been on, it was just the affordable housing. That was.
No, it's not only, well, I just have to speak to my experience,
Right.
is that in most projects, all the topics are addressed. Yeah.
My apologies.
All right, well, do we have an agreement that you guys will draft?
Yes,
Yeah, that sounds
we
good.
will.
Within 2 weeks, you'll get it till 2 weeks.
Yeah, that sounds good.
because it's going to the county for, Friday after Saturday. Okay, thank you, Andrew. Now I'm gonna call on Blair. Thank you so much for the, when Roslyn, which is coming up. Also.
Yeah, sorry, I'll make this brief because I know we're over time, but just a couple of key takeaways. I am very, very impressed with the streetscape design. This is adjacent to the Gateway Park, so they're really trying to incorporate that biophilic feel around the entirety of the building. They have done so in a way that they've exceeded tree canopy coverage by 4%, and they're meeting tree replacement, biodiversity requirements, putting in larger tree pits, and trying to integrate like vertical landscaping into the building as well. So that's really great. There has been a lot of controversy about that pedestrian bridge over eastbound lane of Links Flow. I don't know if you guys know where that is, but it's that concrete overpass. So just to give a couple of like pros and cons for both sides. People have argued that number one, it's not being used, that we need to really focus on improved ground level pedestrian crossing versus this overpass. There are arguments that it's not intuitive and that people would prefer to cross on street levels and that the shadows of the bridge have actually caused injury. Versus the other side, there is a lot of data being shared about this intersection being one of the most dangerous in the county. There has been 28 crashes from 2016 to 2025, and 83% indicated on a survey that they are in favor of the bridge. And it will also help with our Vision Zero goals here. So there's a lot of pros and cons, and personally, I feel if it's already existing, you know, if people feel safe in the community using that, I don't see the harm in keeping it, but I know that that kind of conflicts with what Susan Cunningham was saying about creating like new transportation vision. So I wanted to open it up if anyone had any suggestions or strong feelings about keeping or taking away this overpass.
Was the bridge part of the, I'm sorry, was the bridge part of the design? They showed a picture of it. Or is it in the design and question, take it out, or is it not in the design?
So it currently does exist, but they
Yes.
want to remove it.
They want to do what?
The developer wants to
Remove
it,
it.
from
But
what
they-
I understand.
I would suggest that you don't keep the one that's there now. I would replace it. It's the one that's there now was built in the 70s, perhaps 80s, latest. And one idea would be to have a lighter version of a bridge that would be less visually impactful and yet still and fit in the new design. Like you wouldn't have that old bridge in the new design. I was walking through the park today, coincidentally.
Oh. no-
Yeah,
no
and so I
kidding.
know exactly where, and I crossed at that intersection coincidentally again. It is a dangerous intersection. So I have empathy for that person or persons who would like to have the bridge. But I also think the bridge is outdated and not very good to look at.
To answer your question, yes, they would focus their funding and resources on creating that safer crossing act, not redo the bridge. So people, that's what discussion is.
Yeah, personally, I think they need to make the intersection safer and they possibly could do the bridge, but I think that's the minimum to make the intersection safer. And whether they do the bridge, if they do the bridge, I would suggest that it be consistent with the design of the park, less visually intrusive and frankly up to date.
Having an overpass in the new park, isn't there gonna be, is that? does that take-
That's actually right over Fort Myers Drive.
Okay, interesting. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah,
Yeah, he was just asking what bridge.
Oh, no, I already did. I answered.
Neil?
Is there like a sense of what the development for the Marriott site is going to envision as well? Like, are they gonna envision some sort of like pedestrian bridge over Langston Boulevard that, you know, would replace the one that is like slated to be brought down through this park redevelopment?
So right now with that particular project, since it is on hold, one of the things that was considered was potentially keeping that up until we find out when that project will be coming forward and figuring out what the options and alternatives are for safer crossings along that area. I believe that particular bridge also conforms to ADA requirements as opposed to the one that's on southbound or eastbound Langston Boulevard, which I believe are just connected with stairs. So there's a little bit more to consider there from an accessibility standpoint, but also from a timing standpoint, which is, I think, another reason why the discussion related to that particular bridge over Langston Boulevard westbound has been a little more difficult to discuss because we just don't have the clarity right now on that development.
I mean, this question is really more of a transportation question than a question. Does it affect any open space issues? Does it affect getting into Gateway
Access.
Park?
I mean, it brings you right into Gateway Park. It like this starts and ends kind of at the center of Gateway.
So it'd be important to us from the standpoint of
People
good,
being-
safe,
Yeah.
effective access to the park. That's really the extent of our interest.
Yeah, not bad.
It's concrete.
I mean, I guess I feel a little agnostic. It's kind of like not our.
I don't see how keeping it or taking it down affects making the street level crossing better. I think that's separate. And there are good cases to meet for both, but I think improving the street level crossings just sounds like they're already part of the conversation here, and that should most continue today.
I think we have to figure out what the design is. The other both bridges are large and they do kind of create walls in the park. There may be benefits to that, but today it seems like it's a disbenefit in the sense that they're dark spaces and
Oh, I see.
things
what
like
you're
that.
saying.
Like, you know what I mean?
But isn't that going to be changed when the Gateway Park comes in?
Again, that's where the design of the park, I think, is instrumental to be in it.
Yeah, I think those
Discuss.
are coming on. Mark, right, Mark?
Yeah, the eastbound bridge. Yeah, it's not programmed to be on there.
Yeah, I don't think there's a skywalk of some kind. It's
Mhm.
not the one that's there.
Thank you.
Yeah, just right around it.
The only other issue that it kind of went over my head, there was an energy engineer at the second piece SPRC meeting. And he referred to a specific document, the preliminary energy model report that was created in 2024. And there were some issues of potentially the developer doing cost cutting for short-term energy system decisions that might be detrimental in terms of like CO2 production and things of that nature, but I don't have a grasp on that quite yet. But I do know that that's something that I'm gonna like fiddle with a little bit and potentially put in the letter, because I do know that that's something that is important to us in terms of reducing CO2 emissions for buildings, especially right next to our. Those are my two main points.
Great. Well, thank you for bearing down. on
If I make a suggestion, if there's been a C2, B2 representative, they have folks who are very experienced and knowledgeable about energy management.
Yeah, that's a good one. They have a checklist.
Yeah.
Okay, and Dave, we'll take yours up next month. I know you're ready. All right,
We're chomping at the bit, it looks like.
Yeah, we're always coming.
Dave, it's awesome. Everybody here, we're in my place here. All right, So we are now at the end of our meeting and we talked about letters to, so will you get a draft at the same schedule as you? Thank you. And I'm supposed to help you. Thank you for doing that. All right, and then Gary, should we put off till next month?
Let's do that. It might take more than a minute and I don't want to delay them even 1 minute.
Okay, all right.
So,
So we'll come to Gary's got his priority. Okay, and I think, is there anything else for the good of the order? Thank you, everybody, for sticking with us, especially today.
Thank you, David.
The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, everybody.
One more.